Have you ever wished you could move things with your mind? Just stare at that remote across the room and have it float right into your hand? This is telekinesis, or psychokinesis, the supposed ability to influence a physical system without any physical interaction. It's a staple of science fiction, from Star Wars to Stranger Things. But is there any truth to it? Could you, with enough practice, really move objects just by thinking? Let's dive into what science has to say about mind over matter. First, let's understand the concept. Telekinesis proposes that our thoughts, our consciousness, can generate some kind of force or energy that extends beyond our bodies to interact with the world around us. People who claim to have this ability often describe a feeling of intense concentration, a focused will that they project onto an object. From spiritual leaders levitating to individuals bending spoons with their gaze. The serious scientific investigation into phenomena like telekinesis falls under the field of parapsychology. One of the earliest and most famous researchers was J.B. Rhine at Duke University. Starting in the 1930s, he conducted experiments trying to find evidence for what he called psi, a general term for psychic abilities. For telekinesis, or psychokinesis, as he termed it, Rhine's most famous experiments involved people trying to influence the roll of dice. The idea was simple. If a subject could mentally will the dice to land on a certain number more often than chance would allow, over thousands of rolls, it would suggest a real effect. So what did he find? Well, some of his initial results were tantalizing. Some subjects did seem to score slightly above chance. However, these experiments were heavily criticized. The main problem was a lack of strict controls. Could the subjects be subtly influencing the dice through a specific throwing technique? Were there biases in recording the data? When other researchers tried to replicate Rhine's experiments under more rigorous conditions, the effects often disappeared. This became a recurring theme in parapsychology, promising initial results that vanish under stricter scrutiny. Let's fast forward to more modern attempts. With the advent of sensitive modern technology, you'd think it would be easier to detect even a tiny telekinetic force. Researchers have used devices called random number generators, or RNGs. These are electronic circuits that produce truly random sequences of zeros and ones. The experiment is to see if a person can mentally influence the RNG to produce more ones than zeros, or vice versa. The Global Consciousness Project, for instance, set up a worldwide network of RNGs. They looked for correlations between major global events like 9/11s or major natural disasters, and deviations from randomness in the output of these machines. The hypothesis was that a massive shared emotional event might create a kind of global consciousness field that affects physical reality. The project did report some statistically significant spikes. But again, a huge debate surrounds the interpretation of this data. Critics argue that when you look at enough data, you're bound to find patterns just by chance. It's like looking at clouds. Eventually, you'll see one that looks like a dragon. Proving that the pattern is meaningful and not just a coincidence is the real challenge. So, from a physics standpoint, what would it take for telekinesis to be real? Our current understanding of the universe is built on four fundamental forces: gravity, electromagnetism, and the strong and weak nuclear forces. All interactions we observe, from a planet orbiting a star to the chemical reactions in your brain, are governed by these four forces. For your mind to move a spoon, your thoughts would have to generate a force strong enough to overcome gravity and air resistance. What kind of force could this be? The most likely candidate would be some form of electromagnetic field, since our brains are electrical. The brain does generate a very weak magnetic field which we can measure with a magnetoencephalogram, or a MEG. But this field is incredibly tiny, about 1 billion times weaker than the Earth's magnetic field. It drops off with distance very quickly, and is far too weak to move even a grain of dust, let alone a spoon. So if telekinesis is real, it would have to involve a new, undiscovered force of nature or a new kind of energy that our current scientific models don't account for. Discovering a new fundamental force would be a revolution in physics, on par with the discovery of electricity. It would change everything. That's why the scientific community is so skeptical. Standard for evidence has to be incredibly high, as the famous astronomer Carl Sagan said. Extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. So far, the evidence for telekinesis hasn't met that standard. But let's play devil's advocate for a moment. What if telekinesis operates on a quantum level? The quantum world is famously weird. Particles can be in multiple places at once, and they can be entangled, meaning they are linked in such a way that measuring one instantly affects the other, no matter how far apart they are. Some have proposed that consciousness itself is a quantum phenomenon, and that it might be able to interact with the quantum world directly. Perhaps a focused mind could influence the probabilistic nature of quantum events, causing atoms in an object to move in a coordinated way. This is a fascinating idea, but it's pure speculation. We currently have no evidence that consciousness can directly influence quantum systems, and no clear theory explaining how it would work. These ideas often live in the gap between what we know and what we don't. While it's exciting to think about, it's not yet science. So, where does that leave us? Are all the stories of telekinesis just hoaxes or self-delusion? Many of them probably are. The world of psychic performers is filled with magicians and illusionists who can replicate telekinetic feats using clever tricks. Bent spoons can be explained by pre-bending the metal or using principles of metal fatigue. Levitating objects often involve hidden threads or magnetic fields. The human mind is also very good at seeing patterns where none exist and wanting to believe in the extraordinary. This desire to believe is powerful. The idea that we are not just physical machines, that our minds have power beyond the confines of our skulls, is deeply appealing. It speaks to a sense of potential and wonder. But science isn't about what we want to believe. It's about what we can demonstrate and prove. Despite decades of research, there has never been a single, repeatable experiment, performed under controlled conditions, that has conclusively demonstrated the existence of telekinesis. Every time a claim is investigated rigorously, the effect either disappears or a conventional explanation is found. The grand prize offered by magician James Randi for anyone who could demonstrate a paranormal ability under scientific testing. Conditions went unclaimed for decades before it was discontinued. So, is telekinesis possible? According to everything we currently know about physics and biology, the answer is no. The forces generated by our brains are simply not strong enough, and there is no known mechanism through which thought could influence matter at a distance. While it's fun to imagine having superpowers, the reality is that the universe operates according to consistent physical laws. However, science is always evolving. We are constantly learning new things about the universe. Perhaps one day we will discover a new force or a new aspect of reality that makes something like telekinesis plausible. But until that day, until someone can walk into a lab and move an object with their mind in a way that can be repeated by anyone, telekinesis will remain in the realm of science fiction and fantasy. It's a wonderful, imaginative concept. But for now, if you want that remote, you're still going to have to get up and get it yourself. Thank you so much for watching. What do you think? Do you believe telekinesis is possible, or is it pure fantasy? Let me know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this journey into the science of the unexplained, don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more content. See you next time.